Welcome to Marketing People Love. I'm your host, Jacques Spitzer, and if you're passionate about storytelling, brand marketing, and knowing what it takes to create marketing people love, then this podcast will be a place for you to get inspired by some of the top experts in the world. Today, I have Chris Gronau, Director of Brand Response Content for Manscaped. Chris has been there since the very humble beginnings when Manscaped was just trying to sell product before they were this household name in the US and going worldwide. And he's going to talk about what it's like to work with ball jokes. Not really, but kind of. He's going to talk about this need to create different types of content at various levels of the marketing funnel. He's going to talk about the power of working with celebrities like Rob Gronkowski and Pete Davidson and how he has been part of evolving this brand and taking it worldwide. So go ahead, sit back, pour yourself a drink, but just make sure that it's on the rocks. Neat. Chris, welcome to Marketing People Love.
This episode is brought to you by Brand Pop. Do you want to craft a compelling brand voice that is consistent and breaks through the noise? Then Brand Pop is for you. Brand Pop takes users through a self-guided online workshop filled with incredible animated explainer videos and interactive modules that allow you to answer key questions like how do I want to make my customers feel and what sets my brand apart from the rest. Head over to mybrandpop.com and use the code MPL20 to save an additional 20%. That's mybrandpop.com, code MPL20.
Thank you to all of our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So you spend a majority of your life talking about trimming balls. Let's just start there. How does that feel?
It's kind of interesting because when I first started at Manscaped about 3.5 years ago, it was a much more taboo subject, and Manscaped was a lot less well known as they are today. I'm so desensitized to it at this point, and I think a lot of employees from Manscaped are so desensitized. It's kind of funny when we talk to outside people and get their perspective, and sometimes it's a little bit shocking, especially like sometimes like with our older demographics or even my family members when I talk about it. But it just comes natural, like in our meetings and everything. It's really funny listening to people talk about it in a very like serious meeting.
I just want to say from the get-go, I've never been jealous of whoever works in HR at Manscaped. I'm just so glad that you guys have taken advantage of what, to your point, I can't even say is anymore, was a taboo subject. And you've been part of the journey now for over 3 years. And this thing has been growing so rapidly. And I know I've told you this, without any microphone on, but on the record, just been such a fan of you and the work that you've done. I know you've been a very early member of this performance creative team. And so I'd love to just open it up with like, what has it been like the last 3 years learning about creating marketing people love and being part of this like now global brand?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, when I was first approached by a recruiter that represented Manscaped, I took a deep dive into their website, looked at the products and stuff, and I had been really interested in that style of marketing, very performance-driven marketing, and I just jumped on this opportunity because I thought, the products that we have are so unique, and it's such a fun conversation and topic to discuss in our ads that there's just infinite possibilities of different ads you can create with our products and the unique features and selling points of it.
And so, you've seen it grow from a place where, you were very scrappy, shooting everything, I'm sure either yourself or maybe with a contractor, but it's like very scrappy, to now working with huge names. And so I'm curious, if you could name one or two of the campaigns that you've been a part of, like what makes them the campaigns that you're most proud of and the kind of the why behind that?
Yeah, I think, like you said, in the early days, we were really scrappy. Even some of the stuff I even, jumped in and was an actor in just to get the job done. And going from those really scrappy days where it was like all performance driven to really start building a brand. And, we got the right leadership in place to start evolving the brand. And I remember the biggest celebrity that we got that really like struck me was Rob Gronkowski.
Yep.
And I think that kind of just blew my mind because I helped write those scripts, and just watching him, do exactly what was on the script. And he was totally loving, being on set, and such a fun guy to work with. I think that moment really struck me.
There is an art to making sure that you write something that's tailored to the athlete. And then Rob in that was so great because he's so masculine because he's huge and he's a football player, he's attractive, and he's all the things that is masculine. He's also so playful, which is kind of a personification of just what you all have built at Manscaped. I mean, so clearly, you knew who you were picking out the gate as like, this isn't just random happenstance, in other words.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next person that I can think of, which came out recently, was Pete Davidson. I was partnering with Pete, and his style of intelligent humor like really just fit perfectly with the brand, and we couldn't have picked a better person to partner with for these. So we're really excited to be working with him and continue to.
I feel like that's really it's the evolution that you all have been through, where it went from strictly performance only, because it has to be really in the first 100 million, to now being able to do something where it's kind of hard to quantify the exact impact, but it's having an impact. And so I'd love your perspective on that. Like, you've been part of seeing this journey. Manscaped has been successful in it. If you had advice to other marketers out there who are thinking about, they're leading their brands and they're like, at what point do I start investing in things like that, where it has impact that's a little harder to quantify than like what I'm seeing in my North Beam or Triple Whale or whatever ads managers you're in?
Right.
It's like, I'm curious, what do you feel like you've learned being part of that journey?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like starting out, we were so performance driven, and then we have, leadership that came in that really helped us build the brand. But I mean, you definitely have to have both sides of the equation, because if you go too far performance driven, then you have nothing that's like memorable in the ads. And especially after just talking to people, throughout the country, even asking them like, what was your favorite Manscaped ad? And at first it was like Rob Gronkowski, and we've done stuff with Max Holloway and Marshawn Lynch, and even just recently talking about the Pete Davidson stuff, and it leaves a lasting impression in their mind. So you definitely have to have that brand side of things, but that's more of like a long-term play, where the performance side is the short term. And I feel like there's a lot of relatively new social sites like TikTok, and all those short form ads that can really drive the performance, but having celebrities and those big brand pieces definitely help us drive the long-term plays.
I love how you broke that down, because I think it's difficult for especially brands who have been 100, because they have to be, like, in the early days you have to be 100% performance oriented,
Right.
Like, or else the brand just can't sell, can't grow. Help me understand how you think about the role of, we'll call it like celebrity driven campaigns, more highly produced scripted assets, and then more like UGC offer driven. Like, when you look at that funnel, like, how do you think about each layer of that? So it's probably one of the more nerdy questions I'm going to ask, but I know you can go there because this is your world.
Yeah.
So help me understand, like, what are you thinking about at each of those levels? And obviously you've lived primarily in the top two. Like, I don't think you're creating a lot of UGC, but like, I think there's a lot of brands that just can't get out of the UGC cycle, and to your point, make something memorable. And it's an interesting dilemma.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first started with Manscaped, and we started featuring a lot of our like UGC content, and that really drives performance. And I think it's because a lot of it, you get like authentic, almost testimonial type perspectives of people and like what they think about the product. So that really kind of drives the performance side of things. Whereas, today's like, people don't really want stuff that's so salesy per se, and like having a more casual conversation about the product and the features and stuff. I think that's why UGC performs so well. And then kind of going into that more like mid-tier range, like it's kind of like high production value. The main focus would be more like YouTube and Facebook, I think, in my mind, and making really driving home the point of like the problem and how your product solves it, I think is the key messaging there. But um, I think like on the top tier level from like a brand play, I like to try to incorporate as much of those like DR elements as I can into those pieces where
Yeah.
like if you watch today's like TV commercials, a lot of them aren't like they were 10 years ago. It's some of the stuff is like direct to camera, like almost like spokesperson driven, where they're, talking about the product and like creating a memorable moment, whether that be like funny or an emotional moment. So you're like kind of educating, entertaining your audience while, you lead them to the end and get them to like hopefully go to the website if you're a direct to consumer company.
No, it's really interesting. And you talked about educating, entertaining. We call it edutainment. I don't know if we made it up, probably not. But it very much is that style of, I was listening to a podcast recently with James Patterson, who he's gone on to be one of the most famous authors, American authors of all time. Like his books are some of the most high selling books of all time. But he actually ran an ad agency way back when, was behind the flame broiled Whopper campaign for Burger King way back when. I only know that because I'm friends with Jeff, who was the CEO at the time at Burger King, and he always talks about how brilliant James Patterson was as a marketer. And so there's this quote, he was just like recently on a podcast where he's talking about how people would ask him, well, how do you do great marketing? And he said he used to go and talk in front of people on a stage, and he'd take an empty pie tin and he would fill it with whipped cream, and he'd splash someone in the face. And he'd splash them in the face, and then he'd say, first, you need to get someone's attention, and then you need to say something smart. And that was his illustration. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here's this guy who's like, this has been his shtick for 40, 50 years. I'm like, this is what we do professionally, Chris. Like,
Absolutely.
I was like, that's a great illustration. That is so true.
There's so many people that get it wrong where if you don't capture people's attention, everyone's attention is so slow or so quick right now that they're scrolling on their phones. And if you don't get that, attention in the first couple of seconds, you've lost them. But the other thing to that is you don't want to be clickbaity either. Like it has to really fit the commercial or else they're gone too. So that's kind of the balance, is trying to catch something that's eye-catching and grabs their attention without it being too clickbaity.
But you're also going to take this idea and end up smashing a pie tin into some guy's crotch in your next ad. So, I'm just kidding.
Totally. I'll give you credit for it.
Yeah, take it. I'm just kidding. But I think that's what that skill set you just described is, understanding how to capture, maintain, someone's attention and then drive them towards an action is the rare skill set that you possess. I'm curious, what was it like collaborating with Raindrop? I remember when we first kicked things off with you and Carter, a lot of the performance driven sort of mid-tier creative was new to you all to collaborate with somebody with. And I just be curious what it was like, and what did you maybe learn or not learn, about what it was like to collaborate with, this outside agency, these writers, as someone who's been carrying the load of that for so long.
Yeah, no, it was really great. And I mean, I was a huge fan of you guys from the very beginning. And I remember, back in the day, like I really kind of looked up to some of the stuff that you guys have done as well. And, getting to that moment too, to be able to work with you guys was a huge opportunity. Yeah, I learned a lot about, especially having a group of writers, especially from the comedic side, really help. Because you're trying to entertain, the audience and educate them, like you were saying, as you take them along this journey. But if it's not funny or like engaging, you kind of lose them at a certain point. So to really have an anchor video that is a little longer in scope, you want to make sure that you're really driving that messaging home with like humor and taking them on a journey that people will want to keep watching.
So that's it for now.
Make sure to subscribe so you can check out part 2 of this conversation, where Chris shares what inspires him to make marketing people love and how he has been part of evolving the brand and taking it worldwide.